may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, I am very excited to bring y'all this video because I think that this should legitimately help a ton. So y'all know that I am the first person to admit that I am no fantasy baseball expert. This is why I tell y'all all the time to leave comments whenever you have a different opinion than what I said, because a lot of the times your opinion is going to be probably better than mine. But what we've been able to do for this video and what we are going to be doing going forward is I'm going to be doing the research into what the nerds have already done. So the nerds, y'all know fantasy baseball. The best thing about baseball is the large sample and how analytics can really drive everything. So there's actually an expected batting average. There's actually an expected on base percentage, an expected slugging calculated by StatCast, where they use exit velocity, they use launch angle, they use walks, they use strikeouts, and they just put really everything together to show historically what a player should be batting and what they should be doing with getting on base and their slugging. And how we are going to use this is we're going to go through and look at some players that there's a massive difference between their expected batting average, their expected on-base percentage, their expected slugging, and with what they currently have. So not all these players are having bad seasons. Some of these guys are having good seasons so far, but the underlying metrics are showing, hey, they should be having elite seasons. Maybe you can go buy them at high price, but compared to what they have actually done, compared to what's probably going to happen going forward, it looks like you should be getting a discount. Now, of course, before we get into it, make sure you go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out a ton. And let's bring up our first player, someone that I actually advise y'all to avoid in the second round, and it looks like I was just flat out wrong. This is going to be Bryce Harper, who was going in the middle of the second round, obviously outfielder for the Phillies. And I know that you hear Bryce Harper, you go, okay, is the man 33, 34? He's been in our minds for the past plus decade. But no, he's still only 28 years old. Now, I will point out that the Phillies are 11th in OPS so far, so that is relevant for us trying to identify those hitters in lineups that we actually like to target. And the reason that I was avoiding Bryce Harper in fantasy baseball drafts and the reason I was advocating to avoid him was if you go back to what we had with his large sample, if you go back to that 2019 season, which y'all know by now that I love to look at. I mean, 2019 was not a good year. He had 573 at-bats, a 260 average, a 372 on base, a 510 slugging, and 15 stolen bases. So I was looking at that going, you know what? If he comes anything close to this, he just isn't going to reach that mid-second round value. Now, I know in 2020, he bumped up pretty much across the board. He had a higher batting average. The on-base percentage was up at 420. The slugging was over 540. So, yeah, 2020 was great, but he had less than 200 at-bats, and y'all know that we want to avoid those small samples. But at this point, we can go, hey, you know what? We've seen Bryce Harper just be elite before. We understand that it is in his range of outcomes. And so far in 2021, he has been one of the best players in baseball. Not only has he been one of the best players in baseball, he's done this while having an extremely unlucky season, to be honest, because if you look at his expected batting average, it's up there at 387. If you look at his expected on-base percentage, it's up there at 542. If you look at his expected slugging, it's at 871. So just elite numbers that are at the top of baseball along with Mike Trout. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. Now, yes, he's been good so far. You're not buying him low. If anything, you're probably going to have to buy him a little bit high, but I think it's worth it. Right now, his average is 330. His on base is 455 and his slugging is 632. So probably, yeah, he's going to regress slightly. Probably you're not going to see those numbers maintained throughout the course of the entire season. But I don't think you have to be worried about that much regression when he's already been getting unlucky compared to what has supposed to happen so far. So maybe he regresses, and him regressing is actually just staying at a 333 average, staying at a 455 on base percentage, and staying at a 632 slugging. It looks like Bryce Harper could easily have an elite season. We know that he's also not like a Mike Trout. He is going to give you some stolen bases. So that's another thing that I want to point out. Okay, so let's stay with that same team. Let's go over to the catcher position with JT Realmuto, who is 30 years old, was going in the beginning of the 4th round of fantasy baseball drafts this offseason. But this is another case where Yes, I understand. He's had a hot start. He's been good, but the underlying metrics say that he should have been better. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous here. Now, if we go to 2021, I mean, he's had 69 at-bats. The batting average is over 300. The on-base is over 400. The slugging is close to 5. And we know those are elite numbers for a catcher. We know that at the catcher position, it's nearly impossible to find that type of consistency. But if you look at the expected numbers based on the launch angle, based on the exit velocity, based on his walks and his whiffs, I mean, the average should have been up there at 353, the on base up at 444, and the slugging over 600. Now, I know if we take a step back and if we look at him through 2019 and 2020, there you can be a little bit hesitant. In 2019, he had 538 at-bats, a 275 average, a 328 on base, and a 493 slugging. And that's good for the catcher position. We understand that a catcher is a little bit different than outfield, where the minimum thresholds for these players to make a difference in your lineup are going to be different. And in 2020, he had 173 at-bats. He regressed slightly with a 266 average, a 349 on base, and a 491 slugging. But right now, he's had a hot start to 2021. And just like Bryce Harper, it should have been better based on all underlying metrics. So even if he does regress slightly with how he's been playing, maybe the numbers stay the same. So yes, it's not technically a buy low, but he's a trade target nonetheless. Go buy him high because maybe he's just an elite asset. Okay, so now let's go to an actual buy low. Let's go to someone who his season-long numbers don't look great, but they should. Let's go over to Max Muncy, who 30 years old, playing for the Dodgers. We know that the Dodgers, you want the hitters in that lineup. I don't know how many times we have to talk about this, but in case you are a new listener of the channel, the reason you want to target those hitters in lineups like the Dodgers, the Padres, those high prolific teams is because when your hitter goes up to the plate, he's more likely to see runners on base. He's also more likely to have hitters after him whenever he does get on base that can hit him home. And if they are going through the lineup, that means more at-bats. But anyway, here he was going in the 9th round, so he was pretty much a later pick. And the reason for this was the massive drop-off that we saw in 2020. But we already know on this channel, we're not scared of those 2020 seasons. We want to overlook them. We want to look at 2019 and what they have done in 2021. Now in 2019, he had 487 at-bats, a 251 average, a 374 on base, and over a 500 slugging. So I know those numbers don't look great, specifically the average, but he's getting on base. He's hitting for power, and that's all you really want if you're going to be playing in a lineup like the Dodgers. Now in 2020, everything went down. I mean, the average went under 200. The on base was at 331, and the slugging was under 400. But still, small sample, very weird year. We don't need to focus too much in on that. Now in 2021, this is where I think we should be seeing signs to buy. Now, he's had 71 at-bats, and he's not been great. I mean, it's a 239 average, a 455 on base, and a 423 slugging. But if you look at the underlying metrics, the average should bump up from 239 to 283. The on base from 455 to 494. The slugging should take a significant bump up as well. So here, this is probably the one player that, yes, you are buying low on him, but all of these guys on this list, I mean, if you look at the expected numbers versus what have actually happened so far, I think they are all guys that you can go out, send offers for, even if you're paying a little bit of a premium based on where they were drafted in fantasy baseball drafts this offseason. I think maybe in the long run, you could be winning these deals. Now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I really hope y'all got something from it. Let me know if y'all like me going through looking at these expected stats, because I think that honestly, it's probably a lot better than what I can do. And this would be way better research, in my opinion, than what I've been doing up to date. But yeah, thank you guys. Drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see y'all with the video tomorrow. I want to give a big thank you for everyone joining the flock: Devin Strom, Alejandro, Mark, Jared, Caleb, and IV of Lean, Randotron, Micah, Larry, and Tyler.